The story kicks off a few years back, high above the frozen mountains of Antarctica, with a Soviet Union plane flying through the air. This plane was headed back from a top-secret mission. Inside the cockpit, two pilots were flying the aircraft. Suddenly, the co-pilot gets up from his seat and heads to the back to hang out and mess around with the rest of the team. But in a split second, the whole vibe shifts. While they're joking around, he suddenly pulls out a gun and starts spraying bullets at his own teammates. Nobody has a clue what's going on. The team members try to lay down some cover fire to save their own skins. But during the struggle, the main pilot flying the plane gets hit by a bullet. The plane spins out of control and slams into the mountains, crashing with a massive explosion. Everyone on board ends up buried deep under the snow. Now the story jumps to the present day. Years later, right in the middle of those same icy mountains at a USA research center, the temperature has tanked to minus 55 degrees Celsius. Scientists had come here for research, but now the season of brutal cold and storms was closing in. The staff gets word that they have to evacuate the base in just 3 days and head back home. Everyone was getting a party ready, stoked to be going home. But they had no idea that death was actually right on their doorstep. This is where we meet Carrie Stetko, who's a U.S. Marshal. Carrie is just about to go take a shower in her room when she hears the voice of her friend, Dr. John Fury, at the door. Dr. Fury was like a father figure to Carrie. Fury warns her that a storm is coming and they gotta clear out of the base fast. Right then, Carrie gets a call from the senior officer, Russell Hayden. Russell gives her some news that totally catches her off guard. A body has been spotted out in the middle of the frozen mountains. Russell tells her she's got to check out this body before the storm hits. Carrie takes Dr. Fury with her and hops into a ski plane with a pilot named Delphi, heading out toward that deserted spot. Flying over the massive icy peaks, they reach the place where the body was lying. Carrie is baffled. How did this person even get out to this middle of nowhere spot? The body was lying face down and was completely frozen to the ice. When Carrie and Fury flip it over together, Carrie's heart practically jumps into her throat. The guy's face was completely torn apart. From the ID card around his neck, they figure out he was a teammate from their other base named Weiss. They bring the body back to their base. Where there used to be a party vibe, the sight of this corpse leaves everyone in dead silence. When Dr. Fury examines the body in the lab, he finds something else really weird. There were stitches on the corpse's feet. Fury says this wound is fresh, but the actual cause of death was still a total mystery. When Carrie walks out of the lab, her mind is completely numb. Then the senior officer, Russell Hayden, comes up to her. Carrie tells him this wasn't an accident, it's a murder. Russell is totally shocked by this. Without wasting any time, Carrie heads to the records room to dig up the dirt on that dead teammate's base. The data manager tells her that teammate was stationed at the other base. Carrie tries to radio that base to get in touch, but all she gets from the other end is silence. Then suddenly the landline phone starts ringing. A super terrified voice comes through on the other end. It's Mooney speaking. Carrie, you gotta get here right now, but remember, you have to come alone. Then the phone cuts off. On top of that, things were getting worse. The pilot, Tom, reports that the storm outside has gotten even more vicious and is heading straight for the base. Now everyone's scrambling to evacuate. Carrie asks for a plane to go to the other base, but the officers say no because all the planes were busy getting people out. But Carrie doesn't give up and decides to head out with Delphi. Carrie grabs her gun, tells Dr. Fury what's up, and reaches the other base with Delphi. Once they get there, they don't find a soul. The temperature had dropped to minus 65 degrees Celsius. Delphi insists on heading back, but Carrie goes to check one last building and uses a safety rope to head toward it through the blizzard. Once she gets inside, Carrie hears the sound of music playing on a radio from one of the rooms. As soon as Carrie steps inside, her eyes go wide. Mooney was there with his throat slit. Before Carrie can process anything, a masked attacker lunges at her from behind in a deadly assault. Carrie somehow manages to save herself and runs out of that building. But the scene outside was even more terrifying. In the middle of the high winds, that attacker catches up to Carrie. During the struggle, Carrie's ice blade breaks and her gun falls somewhere in the snow. Now Carrie was totally empty-handed. To save her life, she runs back toward Delphis building using the rope and tries to shut the door. Right then, the attacker grabs the door from the outside, but Carrie uses every bit of strength she has to slam the door shut and collapses unconscious right there. A few hours later, when Carrie wakes up, she's totally panicked. It's like she thinks the attacker is still standing right in front of her. But as soon as her eyes open, she sees her partner Delphi standing over her. Delphi calms Carrie down and tells her he found her passed out in the outer room, so he brought her inside. Delphi also mentions that Carrie's hand was hurt, so he bandaged it up. Carrie looks at her injured hand and pulls herself together. She immediately grabs a gun and moves forward to find that masked attacker. As soon as she reaches an inner room, she sees someone hiding there. Without thinking twice, Carrie levels her gun at him. Right then, The guy shows his ID card and says his name is Robert Price and he's a CIA agent. Delphi flips the lights on, and Robert explains to Carrie that the U.S. sent him to investigate this specific murder case and that he's on her side. After hearing Robert out, Carrie lowers her gun. Carrie and Robert talk about the murder. Robert says they have to go to another base because they aren't getting any radio signals from there either. This means something has gone seriously wrong over there. Carrie starts to trust Robert a little bit. Then Carrie, Robert, and Delphi head out toward the third base. But Carrie still had a nagging fear in her mind. She didn't fully trust Robert yet. She kept thinking maybe Robert was lying and that he might actually be the killer who did all this. When they get to the third base, that place is also totally empty and deserted. Carrie and Robert check the documents and records of the people working there, but they don't find much. Then Robert shows Carrie some really weird maps drawn on the wall. Looking at those marks, Carrie's head starts spinning. Why were these maps made in this deserted spot in Antarctica? And what is even going on here? Then Delphi tells Carrie that there are a bunch of grenades lying around the area. Seeing this, everyone gets seriously spooked. They can't figure out where all these weapons came from in this desolate part of Antarctica. The whole thing was getting more and more tangled. Finally, they all decide to head to the location shown on the map Robert found. Maybe they'd find a clue there. They all hop into a special tracked vehicle meant for snow and head toward that location. Everywhere they looked was just a massive sea of white snow. After a long drive, Carrie looks at the map and tells them to stop the vehicle. But when they get out, there was nothing there. Just endless snow. Robert and Carrie are totally confused, but Carrie was sure something was off. She looks around and notices that the snow in this spot had been messed with. Then suddenly, Carrie's foot sinks and she falls into a deep pit under the snow. Robert and Delphi freak out. Delphi immediately runs back to the vehicle to get a rope. After falling, Carrie pulls herself together. Then she notices a wall that had fresh blood on it. She realizes something really bad happened here. Then using the rope, Robert and Delphi climb down too. They see a door that looks like a tunnel. As soon as Robert opens it, everyone is floored. It wasn't a tunnel, it was an old plane that had vanished years ago. When they go inside the plane to investigate, Carrie's eyes nearly pop out. There was a body there that had been shot. Moving a bit further, they find several more bodies. The pilot's body in the cockpit was also riddled with bullets. Carrie realizes that everyone inside this plane killed each other. But why? Then Robert finds fresh blood on the floor of the plane. Carrie realizes this blood belongs to Weiss, the guy whose body they found first. This means Weiss had been here before he died. Robert points out an empty box lying there and says something was taken out of it. Now Carrie starts getting suspicious of Robert, so Robert tells her the truth. He says, "I was sent to Antarctica on a secret mission because the government heard something illegal was going down here. He thinks maybe there was nuclear material in that box." Carrie is stunned to hear this, but then a terrifying sound echoes out. The path they used to get inside starts collapsing because the snow was cave-in. Delphi screams, but by then, the snow reaches the plane door. Now they had no way to get out. Oxygen was running low, and Carrie's radio signal was totally gone. Carrie completely breaks down and sits in a corner, praying to God because maybe only he can save them now. Then Robert sees a glimmer of hope, an emergency exit. Robert says they can blast their way out, but the pilot Delphi stops him because an explosion could kill everyone. But Robert had no other choice. Using the battery from Carrie's radio, Robert triggers a blast. The path out of the plane opens up, and the three of them escape the jaws of death and reach their tracked vehicle. But luck wasn't on their side there either. Because of the freezing cold, the vehicle wouldn't start. Delphi doesn't give up, and finally the engine roars to life. They hop into the ski plane with Delphi and reach the base. Carrie looks for data on the plane crash in her office, but she finds nothing. Then the station officer, Russell, interrupts her. "You should go get your hand treated by Dr. Fury first." Following Russell's advice, Carrie goes to see Dr. Fury. When Fury unwraps the bandage on her hand, everyone is horrified. Two of Carrie's fingers had turned completely black and rotted due to frostbite. With a heavy heart, Fury says, "Carrie, these have to be cut off, otherwise the infection will spread to your whole hand." Carrie is devastated, but to keep fighting death, she has to sacrifice her fingers. Dr. Fury cuts off her fingers in the operating room. There's total chaos at the base because a massive storm is right on top of them, and it's time to evacuate. Carrie is sitting in her room feeling miserable that the killer is still out there. Robert gives her some encouragement. Then a news report comes over the radio that puts the life back into Carrie. A scientist from Mooney's base is still alive and is hiding right here at our base. Carrie and Robert head out to find him. Carrie reaches her office and is just about to grab a gun from her locker. Then Carrie sees that same scientist hiding in the corner of her office, terrified and holding a knife. Carrie talks to him saying, "Don't be scared. I won't let anything happen to you. Just tell me what happened at your base." Hearing Carrie's words, he starts telling the truth. He says their team had found the plane, and as soon as they opened a box, before he can say anything else, Dr. Fury's voice comes from outside the office. And suddenly, Dr. Fury walks in. The scientist sees him and looks like he's just seen death itself. He bolts out of the office without a second thought and locks himself in a room. The scientist was beyond terrified. He wouldn't listen to a word Carrie said. Then, from the other door of that room, that same masked killer who attacked Carrie before walks in. Carrie is watching all this from outside the room. The killer attacks the scientist from behind with a sharp weapon, but the scientist doesn't give up. He gives the killer a massive shove, causing both of them to fall outside the base. Outside, the blizzard winds were so strong that standing up was almost impossible. Because of the fall, the killer's weapon gets stuck on the stairs. While he's trying to pull the weapon out, the scientist starts running away. Carrie also smashes through the gate to get outside and save the scientist. Carrie puts on a coat to shield herself from the storm, but the killer spots her. He leaves his weapon right there and chases after the scientist. The scientist was injured, so he couldn't get very far. The killer tackles him and brutally breaks his neck, killing him. Seeing this, Carrie goes wild with rage and starts landing heavy blows on the killer's head. She was just about to kill the murderer when Robert stops her, because it was still important to find out the motive for the murders. When they bring the killer inside the base and pull off his mask, Robert and Carrie are stunned. It wasn't just anyone, it was one of the pilots from their own base who had been going by the name Tom. Carrie and Robert grill Tom about the murders and that mysterious plane buried in the ice. Carrie and Robert wanted to know what exactly was in that box that caused so many people to be killed. When Tom stays quiet at first, Carrie angrily tells Robert to cut off his fingers. Terrified of the pain, the killer Tom breaks and confesses that his real name is Yuri and that the stuff taken from the plane's box is in his room. Carrie and Robert lock Yuri in a large room. Then the station officer Russell comes by and warns them that the storm is about to hit the base. They only have 10 minutes to get out. After that, the plane will take off. Carrie only gets 10 minutes from Russell, and she runs toward Yuri's room. Meanwhile, Russell takes the rest of the team toward the plane. Carrie searches the whole room but finds nothing. Carrie angrily goes back to Yuri, but when she sees the room, she's stunned. Yuri had escaped. Carrie pulls out her gun and heads out to find the killer Yuri. Then Carrie finds her partner pilot Delphi, who was covered in blood and seriously injured. Carrie realizes this was also Yuri's doing. Then she hears footsteps behind her. Carrie levels her gun. But it was Robert who had brought bandages for Delphi. Carrie immediately calls Dr. Fury. Dr. Fury was already on the plane. Hearing about Delphi's condition, he risks his life to head back toward the base. Delphi was breathing his last breaths. Then Russell's screaming voice comes over Carrie's radio. "Carrie, you gotta get here fast. The plane is about to take off." Carrie decides to stay at the base, not caring about her own life. Russell flies the plane out with the rest of the base team. Now only Carrie, Robert, Dr. Fury, and the injured Delphi were left at the base. Dr. Fury gets ready to take Delphi to the clinic to save his life. Then Carrie's eyes fall on the keys for the ski plane, and it hits her. She tells Robert that Yuri is a pilot, and he took the ski plane keys to escape before the storm hit. Carrie and Robert head out into the bone-chilling cold to catch him. The scene outside was hair-raising. The wind was so strong that it was impossible for a person to stand. Carrie and Robert tie themselves to a rope and move forward. Yuri had already reached the ski plane. When Yuri looks back, he sees Carrie and Robert coming his way. Carrie and Robert enter the plane with guns drawn, but the plane was empty. Yuri had used the storm to slip out of the plane and was running back toward the base. Carrie says, "Hurry up, Robert. Otherwise, Yuri will lock the base from the inside and we'll freeze to death out here." The storm was even more brutal now. Carrie kept falling, but somehow they reached the base by holding on to the rope. But unfortunately, Yuri had already locked the base gate. Robert run toward different gates. As Carrie moves toward gate number 2 using the rope, she feels someone pulling her rope from behind. And it was none other than the killer Yuri, who was still lurking outside the base. A massive gust of wind knocks Carrie down. Yuri moves toward her with his weapon. Before Carrie can do anything, her gun gets lost in the snow. She crawls on her knees to save her life. She finds a sharp iron pipe and strikes Yuri with it. But because of Yuri's heavy winter coat, nothing happens to him. Just as Yuri is about to land the final blow on Carrie, Robert shows up from behind and knocks Yuri down. In the middle of the storm, a bloody fight breaks out between the two of them, still tied to the rope. Yuri attacks with his sharp weapon to kill Robert, but Robert dodges it. Robert gets an opening. He unbuckles the safety belt around Yuri's waist. As soon as the belt comes off, Yuri gets blown away like a piece of straw in that terrifying blizzard and falls into the sleep of death forever. Carrie and Robert somehow stumble through the base gate and get inside. They had the bag that Yuri had brought from that mysterious plane. Robert suspected it contained the Soviet government's nuclear material, and opening it was like inviting death. But Carrie takes the risk and opens the bag. Inside, little containers of jelly beans come out. Carrie and Robert are floored. This means Yuri didn't have the real goods. Robert says Yuri must have another partner who double-crossed him and escaped on the plane with the rest of the team. Carrie immediately calls Officer Russell. Russell says there's nothing like that on the plane, but they had forgotten to check a few spots at the base. Carrie asks Russell for the list of those spots. As soon as she checks the list, it hits her. The science room medical lab hadn't been checked. Carrie heads into that dark room alone with a flashlight. There she finds the first body, Weiss, on a table, the same one she found out in the snow. Carrie looks closely at the stitches on the corpse's foot. Suddenly, she remembers the stitches on her own amputated fingers. The unique way of stitching was exactly like what Dr. Fury had used on Carrie's hand. The ground slips out from under Carrie's feet. Dr. Fury was the one who did these stitches. This means Dr. Fury was with Weiss when he was alive, and later, Fury was the one who killed him. Carrie remembers that when she went to see Mooney, she had only told Dr. Fury that she was going from one base to the other, and during that time, Fury had Mooney killed so the truth wouldn't come out. Then Carrie finds another body with fresh stitches. Carrie suspects maybe the nuclear material is hidden inside the body. As soon as Carrie opens those stitches, she finds some stuff packed in plastic inside the body, but it wasn't nuclear material. Carrie looks closely at the plastic. Then a heavy voice comes out of the darkness. "These are diamonds, Carrie. Very valuable diamonds." It was Dr. Fury. Dr. Fury confessed that years ago on that Soviet plane, the whole team killed each other for these diamonds. And then a few years later, when his fellow scientists found that plane, Dr. Fury had all the scientists killed out of greed for the diamonds. Carrie screams, "You betrayed me for the greed of diamonds." Fury says, "I always worked for the country, but the country gave me nothing. Now I want to live for myself." There were tears in Carrie's eyes, but her voice was as solid as a rock. She says to the father-like Dr. Fury in a trembling voice, "Doctor, I have to arrest you." Fury knew there was no way out now, and he'd never be the same in Carrie's eyes. He slowly walks toward the base gate and looks back at Carrie one last time. Fury says in a low voice, "Take care of yourself, Carrie. I'm going away forever now." As soon as he says that, he opens the heavy gate. The minus 65 degrees Celsius blizzard waiting outside swallows him up in a heartbeat. Instead of surrendering, Fury thought it was better to die in that white hell. Carrie just stands there helplessly watching him go. 6 months later, that terrifying scene in Antarctica was finally calm. The entire base was deserted. Robert and Delphi, who had been stuck at this base for the last 6 months, were finally breathing a sigh of relief. The two of them were playing with a ball, waiting for their freedom. Then Carrie shows up and jokes around with Robert. After coming out from the shadow of death, a little smile had returned to their lives. Carrie goes to her office and turns on the computer. She writes an email to the U.S. Marshal Service. Her body and soul were tired of this cold and betrayal. In the email, Carrie asks for a transfer to somewhere where there isn't snow, but rather blazing sun and heat. After sending the email, Carrie comes out of the base. Now that blizzard was completely over. She remembers this whole Antarctica case, those diamonds, and Dr. Fury. Taking one last look at that white desert, Carrie leaves Antarctica forever and heads toward her new destination. This is where the story ends. If you liked the video, definitely give it a like. Subscribe to our channel Dream On World Win, and don't forget to hit the bell icon for more movie recaps like this one.